Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I may be on a lucky streak. It's very rare that I read one issue of a magazine and find two things that I think are worthy of your time, but I did. I read you another one earlier today, and this one is also equally worthy in my judgment. It's called The New Democratic Minority by John Podhoretz in Commentary Magazine, one of my favorite magazines, this current month's issue, December 2024. Kamala Harris lost an election in which her sole qualification was being the second highest ranking person on the national political org chart when the voters didn't like the org. Between 2/3 and 3/4 of Americans believe the country is on the wrong track. That feeling was validated on the Friday before Election Day with the release of the October jobs report. It was awful. A mere 28,000 jobs had been created in an economy that employs 162 million people. Most telling, on Election Day itself, Joe Biden's approval rating stood at 40%. It is true that Kamala Harris was running and not Biden, and perhaps she could have done more to highlight the fact to escape the sinkhole of the nation's disapproval of the man who chose her as his running mate and chose to anoint her as his successor. But she did the opposite. The most significant statement she made during the 107 days of her campaign was that she couldn't think of a single thing she would have done differently from Biden. She offered no reason she should have been president other than that she's a Democrat and she's not Donald Trump. At minimum, as Democrats contemplate where their party needs to go from here, they should not promise to do what the Biden administration did. They should not offer to fund the college educations of the well-to-do by providing debt relief that would be paid for by those who don't go to college. They should not say they will implement new programs by borrowing unprecedented sums of money at a time when payments on the national debt are becoming the largest item in the federal budget. They should not open the border once Donald Trump closes it, and they should not release millions of illegal immigrants into the United States. They should not propose or effect wildly risky moves on the international stage without gaming out the consequences, as they did in Afghanistan in 2021. They should not be describing any future policy as a New Deal, either green or otherwise. They should not talk about phasing out successful elements of the private sector that power our industrial economy, from gas-powered automobiles to natural gas extraction. They should not say that the very redefinition of what it means to be human is openly advocating the scientifically and morally psychotic idea that gender is assigned at birth rather than created when the zygote is. That's the fundamental civil right of our time. But, as Joe Biden would say, here's the deal. Democrats are in fact likely to continue to support all those policies and argue for them, and more still to come, because that is who they are. Democrats have convinced themselves that Republicans are the party of the rich, but in fact, the only income demographic Harris won was Americans who earn more than $100,000 a year. In the aftermath of the election, we've been hearing from Democratic politicians and liberal thinkers decrying the impact of wokeism and questioning the stress the Biden-Harris administration placed on issues like transgenderism. Research supports that criticism. According to one study, the Trump ad that said, "Kamala is for them, Trump is for you," was the most effective of the general election season and made voters notably more likely to cast their ballot for the Republican. But it can't be that the Trump team alone knew it had a winning issue on this transgender matter and then sprung it on the Harris campaign. The Democrats likely spent $200 million or more on voter research this year. They did nightly polling and literally spoke to thousands of people in focus groups across the country. They surely knew that the trans issue had traction with voters. But even as Democratic pitbull Rahm Emanuel said in the New York Times, quote, "When the woke police come at you," he told me, meaning the author of this, "you don't even get your Miranda rights read to you." There was a lot of Democrats barking, people who, quote, "don't represent anybody," end quote, he said, and the leadership of the party was intimidated, end quote again. Rahm Emanuel is a significant thought leader in his party, a two-term mayor of America's third largest city, a former White House chief of staff, a rather ferocious politician who does not suffer fools gladly and is well known for his mostly unpleasant outspokenness. And he was implicitly admitting that he, like everyone else in his party, had been intimidated into silence. He claims the woke don't, quote, represent anybody, end quote, but that's not true, and he doesn't act as if it is. If it were true, they would have no power, and his own behavior demonstrates they have enormous power. They represent the liberal American vanguard, which speaks through the mainstream media, Hollywood, the world of book publishing, the universities, and most of the nonprofit sector. And the most aggressive enforcers inside that vanguard, as Emmanuel notes, have shown how ruthless they can be in using PR campaigns, boycotts, social media assaults, even lawfare in the form of civil suits in their efforts to destroy those who open a mouth against them. That vanguard isn't going anywhere. In fact, with the party in disarray and engaging in recriminations, it's going to gain in power because it is cohesive and self-confident about the virtue of its efforts. A window may have been open for an honest airing of the party's weaknesses, but how long before that window slams shut? Cutting off debate is one of the key tools of the vanguard's trade. And how effective will the discussion be anyway, when there are scores of state and local officials and thousands, hundreds of thousands of party activists who believe they are on the right side of history and will be viewed as civil rights heroes by future generations? They will not feel restrained by the results of a single election. In fact, they may be empowered by them. The national electoral consequences will not change many minds inside the institutions and local offices held by members of the party vanguard prevalent in blue states and cities, including Emmanuel's Chicago, whose latest mayor, Brandon Johnson, was elected in 2023 with an explicitly anti-law enforcement agenda. District attorneys in New York, backed by actions of the state legislature, doubled down after 2020 on their determination not to enforce laws against misdemeanor offenses, in part based on the racialist thinking behind Black Lives Matter. Progressive prosecutors across the country, elected through the financial support of vanguard donors and foundations, have continued to pursue anti-jailing agendas without let-up. And it possesses the energy and enthusiasm that more moderate political types do not have. Moderation cools passions, it doesn't heat them up. What drives the seekers of radical justice is concentrated passion with the power to explode outward and destroy roadblocks in their path. The Democratic Party relies to an astonishing degree on public sector unions and the nonprofit world. Here's what's going to happen. These two forces, which employ millions, will fan out as they have been doing with increasing effectiveness over the past 15 years. They will man local party organizing offices, run for and win low-level elected positions in the party hierarchy, and will show up in unexpected places to enhance the prospects of the most radical voices working within the system. If there are primary contenders at every level in 2026, you should expect the loudest voices, voices inspired by and echoing Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, to drown out those who counsel prudence. As the Trump administration and Republican congressional majorities get to work, the activists will too, harnessing the daily outrages they will discern, create, and amplify through social media to keep their troops motivated and at the ready to move. The implicit idea will be that the Biden-Harris team lost not because they enacted too many left liberal policies in a country that leans right, but too few. What is needed, they will say, is a combination of AOC's vision and Trump's ruthlessness, the kind of ruthlessness Emmanuel evoked in his comment about the woke police, who don't even read people their rights before crushing them. If Trump fails, or his misbehavior proves disqualifying in the eyes of the electorate, we may find ourselves lurching from MAGA to woke neo-socialism without a moment to catch a breath. Anyway, that essay is called The New Democratic Minority by John Podhoretz in the current December 2024 issue of Commentary Magazine. As usual, I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments and especially like it if you hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And so, again, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.